How are you doing? Happy new month. It is so good to see you. I want to welcome all of you to Cultivate Your Mental Wealth. Come thrive with me. And in this space, we plan to journey from places of mental illness to mental wellness, and from mental wellness to mental wealth and mental abundance. This is more than just mental health. Mental health doesn't stop at us, it starts with us. And then we are meant and designed to live in the overflow so that we can connect with and help free and heal our community members and not just ourselves. And that is why we are here for mental wealth. As some of you know, my name is Joyce Chineye Oze, and I am the host of this show. I am also Nigerian American, first generation, born and raised in the States. I'm a civil rights attorney in Chicago, and I'm a mental health advocate. I'm also someone with lived experience with anxiety and depression specifically. What does that mean? It means that nothing that we talk about on this show is just because it sounds good. It means that I'm here to share with you the things that I've journeyed through, the things that I've grappled with in my personal journey, so that you know that what I'm saying is true. It worked for me. It may look different on you, but it can work for you too. So I'm here to journey alongside with you. And I'm so happy to have you in this space and along for the ride. Okay, so quick overview of what we're going to be talking about today. I see some of y'all are already tuning in. Tanya, it's so good to see you, fam. I want you to drop in the comments, where are you watching from? Where are you tuning in from? I also want to say happy Mental Health Awareness Month. It feels so good to live in a time where mental health is being brought to the forefront of communication, and we're talking about it. We've talked about it before on the show about how mental health and mental illness and mental wellness were like taboo terms, especially in the Black community. We avoided this conversation for so long. So, how amazing that we can have an entire month to celebrate our strength and resilience and to not let mental illness define or limit us. Welcome to Mental Health Awareness Month. As additional overview, today we are going to be continuing with food and your mood. I'm telling y'all, this is one of my favorite topics because your girl loves to eat and your girl loves to cook. So, as some of you noticed, we talked about this last time we were together about how food affects our mood. And today we're going to be continuing that conversation in our part two, but also we'll be talking about recipes. I literally have groceries lined up so I can show y'all I'm not just preaching it. This is what I live when it comes to food and affecting your mood and your mental health. So that's what we'll be getting into. We'll have some practical pushes. I'll do another audience check in. And yeah, it'll be a great and very exciting show. And before we get into kind of the main segment and discussion, I just want to thank y'all so much. If you tuned in last week, there was a rerun that played, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. And because we're on this mental wellness journey together, I want to talk about how I actually kind of forced myself and I was encouraged by the people that helped produce this show to really practice what I preach. As I've said, I am a civil rights attorney. And what that looks like is a lot of work that is emotionally difficult. And I was actually helping my team in drafting a final report on child abuse. And reading that report was extremely emotionally taxing for me, as I'm sure you can imagine, or maybe you can't imagine. So I was able to, with the support of my team here at blackdoctor.org, take that day of just mental health and take the 2 Tuesdays before this one off in order to make sure that I was okay and make sure that I can come back and have a conversation with you after I've rested. So again, Here on this show, we practice and we live what we preach. We believe in boundaries, checking in with ourselves, and checking in with each other. Okay, so much of a preamble, but I really have missed y'all and I wanted to touch base before I get into the main segment of the show and kind of setting the room. I want to give a shout out to Jacqueline, who just joined us from California. So good to see you. I'm sure it's really warm where you're at. It's getting warmer here in Chicago. So we're definitely excited for that. Continue to let me know where you're calling in from, where you're listening in from. I do go through every comment, if not on the show, then after the show. I also want to say we are going to be talking about so many things today, and I may not be able to answer every comment as we're going through the show. So I encourage you to check out the blackdoctor.org email we set up for this show. It is called Come Thrive 247 at gmail.com. That's Come Thrive 247 at gmail.com. This is how you get direct access to my team. We read through every single email. If you have questions that you want to ask me related to mental health, we'll be sharing a lot of food stuff today. If you want to get some recipes, I love sharing recipes. I love talking about food as it relates to mental health. So check out our email, send me some questions, comethrive247 at gmail.com. I love to connect with you. This is our space and our community. This is our family. So make sure that you make it as interactive as possible. That being said, I do want to make sure that I make it clear I am not a mental health care professional. I am a mental health care advocate, and I will always give you advice and opinions from a mental health care advocate perspective. Also, as we're talking about food, I am not a licensed nutritionist or dietitian. I am someone who loves to cook, who loves to eat, who has spent hours dedicated to researching wellness and mental health, and who can speak to you from my lived experience. So I want to make that very clear as we're having this conversation. But okay, before we get into all the food stuff, let's set the room. I want to remind everyone who's tuning in that this is our space and this is our conversation. Make it an interactive one. If you have questions, I'll try to get to them during the show. If I can't answer your question during the show, I will follow back and answer it. Or you can email us at comethrive247 at gmail.com. But you are safe here. This is a space of honesty, safety, transparency, and empowerment as we walk towards this mental wellness journey together. Okay, folks, let's get into it. So, a few weeks ago, we started part 1 of Food and Your Mood. And some of you may have known this. I, for one, kind of learned this more, that food really does affect your mental health. How many of you knew that food can actually directly impact your mood and your brain activity? It's completely true. There is a scientific link between your gut and your brain. And that scientific link can actually lead to how our mood expresses itself. So what we talked about is food and digestion. And when you're eating foods that are dense in nutrients and vitamins, we're actually promoting that good bacteria in our gut. And what happens when we promote that good bacteria in our gut is it affects the productions of chemicals like dopamine and serotonin. Have y'all heard of those chemicals before? Those are essentially the chemicals that make us feel good. They make us feel happy. They affect the way we have this kind of like reward system in our brain. So eating the right foods actually promotes those certain chemicals in our brain that make us feel happy and that eventually affect our mood, which is so important to take into account what we're putting into our body. And we want to make sure that we're producing these kinds of chemicals in the most optimal or the best way. We also talked about examples of foods that can be harmful. Again, I'm not a nutritionist. This just comes from years and years of studying this for my own mental health and my own physical health journey. One of the things we named as foods that can be harmful is sugar. And I kind of confessed to y'all that I kind of had a sugar addiction a few weeks ago was my confession, and that sugar addiction wasn't really with like candies or those kinds of processed things, but I really liked apple juice. I still do. There was a time, especially in high school, this is actually really gross when I think about it. I used to drink Mountain Dew all the time. No shade to the company, they're fine, but y'all know good and well that there are no nutritional benefits to drinking Mountain Dew. And what sugar actually does is it inflames our gut. That is the same gut that communicates with our brain to produce chemicals like serotonin and dopamine for our mood stability. So if our guts are inflamed by things like sugar, it can't stabilize our mood in the way that we deserve, and it could affect our mental health. Other things we discussed avoiding are things that are high in trans fat. I loved fried fish, but I have to make sure that I eat it in moderation because trans fat can actually decrease your levels of serotonin, which again helps in us feeling joy or happiness. Another thing is alcohol. Again, I don't believe that unless a healthcare provider says absolutely cut this out of your life, or unless you're struggling with your relationship with any of these things, I don't believe in cutting it out wholesale. But we gotta be honest about these things, right? And alcohol can actually serve as a depressant, which most literally affects our moods. So we need to be careful of those types of things, amongst other things. And I'm happy to share if you have more questions one-on-one. So I probably rained on some of your parades because you're saying, Joyce, those are all things I can't eat. So what can I eat? Again, we talked about foods that are going to be dense in nutrients because we want to enrich our quality of life. We want our brains to be functioning in the most optimal, best way possible. We want our brains to be producing the chemicals that can stabilize our mood so we won't have to rely on medications or prescriptions to produce what our bodies naturally are able to produce. So, you can eat and you should eat whole foods. What are whole foods? They are foods that are minimally to not processed at all. There are also foods that don't have preservatives or things like additives or food coloring. And here's what I'll say. I am of the personal opinion that morality shouldn't be tied to food. What do I mean by that? I don't believe that there are foods that are just bad. Because when we talk about food in that way, it brings guilt and shame surrounding that. I believe that there are foods that are more nutritious for us, and I believe that there are foods with little to no nutritional value. But when we're assessing our foods, try not to bring good or bad or morality into it. Try looking at it as in, how am I fueling myself? How is this food making me feel? Whole foods are a great way to fuel your body and your mind because they're minimally processed. You know what you're putting into your body, and you know that you're not introducing chemicals that can later lead to health risks beyond your mental health. Another thing that we should stick to and start to look at are foods that are high in fiber. These are plant-based foods, and they are often, anything plant-based is often full of fiber. Not only do foods that are high in fiber help us feel full for longer, so we're not looking for those fillers or those snacks that we don't need, but foods that are high in fiber also help our bodies absorb sugars more slowly. This helps with the imbalance that I talked about earlier with sugar. Again, sugar isn't inherently bad. It's just Everything we should be looking at in moderation, and moderation, especially if it has little nutritional value. When you eat foods that are high in fiber, because they're digesting the sugars more slowly, you're not going to get that sugar rush that you get. And then that crash that you get around 2 p.m. because you've had too much sugar in your coffee, or you had that cookie in the morning, and then all of a sudden you feel yourself crashing. You want your body to be able to process sugars at a more stable rate because it helps your mood. It helps you from feeling too anxious. It helps you from feeling drowsy in the afternoon. This is why foods that are high in fiber are so important when it comes to your overall mood and that type of stability. Another type of food that we should be eating to help our mood and our stability, our mental wellness, are foods that are high in antioxidants. We have heard antioxidants for a while. In fact, I did not know what they were specifically until I started looking into it more recently. But a very general way of describing antioxidants is that these are foods and substances that are good at fighting inflammation. Remember, sugars inflame our guts and our bodies. So when we eat antioxidants, they actually fight against that inflammation, which helps our gut and helps the communication between our gut and our brain. And when that communication is improved, our moods also tend to improve. So definitely get those foods that are high in antioxidants, because when you have chronic inflammation in your gut, it can also trigger mental health issues like generalized anxiety or even depression. So, examples of foods that are high in antioxidants can be berries, blueberries especially, leafy green vegetables like spinach or kale, turmeric, which is like a seasoning that's yellow. You can find that in a lot of curries, salmon, and dark chocolate. I told you, not all candies, not all sugars are bad. They actually can have some health benefits, especially dark chocolate. Again, moderation is key. So, those are some of the foods that you can eat. So, I'm not just taking away all the foods that you cannot eat. But now that we know what we can eat, what do we do with it? How many of you guys love to cook? And if you do love to cook, definitely let me know what kind of foods you like to cook, what you've been cooking lately, or what are the kind of foods that you grew up eating, that you grew up watching your mom cook. I watched my dad cook a lot. I also watched my grandma cook when I went back to Nigeria. So we talked about what we should eat, but what do we do with them? Again, here we practice what we preach. So I'm going to walk through some of the things that I literally have in my house. Right before the show, I gathered all these ingredients so that I can show you the ones that I shop for, the things that I like, and how I put them together to make sure that there's balance in my diet and to make sure that my mind and my mood are stabilized as I journey in wellness. So, first up, we have tomatoes. I can't tell y'all, there isn't a week that I go to the grocery store and I do not buy a bag of tomatoes at least this big. I love fresh tomatoes, and if I open this up, I actually personally like the tomatoes that are on the vine still. You can get these probably at any grocery store. I like to shop at Whole Foods. I also shop at Target. I go to Walmart. I shop around at different places. But for my fresh produce, Whole Foods is my favorite. Or you can go to some of your local grocery stores that partner with your farmers that are local, because it just tastes different when your produce is fresh and when you know that it's quality. So, tomatoes are a staple in this house. I cook a lot of foods, and a lot of the foods that I do cook come from my background, which is Nigerian. And tomatoes and stews are the basis for a lot of what we eat, which I'm going to get to in a little bit. So, cooking tomatoes could decrease vitamin C, which helps support your brain function and it helps your immune system. but it also can help you improve your mood. Also, cooked tomatoes are high in, I believe it's called lycopene, which reduces heart risk, cancer, and like the degeneration of your eyes. But when you cook them, it's actually much more easy to absorb the antioxidants that you need. Jacqueline, I see you talking about weekly farmers markets. I love it. They can be so expensive, but it's one of my favorite things. Fresh produce is some of the best produce. So if you can stretch it, if you can afford it, I really encourage it. So, what else should we be eating, or what else is good in terms of our gut and our mental health? Ginger. Again, I love ginger. Sometimes I can't get through a whole ginger root. So, one of the next best things are I have ground ginger. And ground ginger, or ginger in general, actually increases your serotonin and your dopamine levels. This is just something that I got from Whole Foods as well, but you can find it in any grocery store. Again, serotonin, dopamine. Those are some of the chemicals that we were talking about that makes you feel rewarded, satisfied, happy. So definitely look for foods and recipes where you can use ginger. And yes, you can also get in a paste, which again, it helps because it's easier just to throw it in the pan and you don't have to worry about chopping it up, grinding it up, or it going bad in a week. Other foods that I really, really love, you're always going to find a red onion in my house because I think it's just a punchier taste. Fun fact, when onions are cooked, the difference between red onions, yellow onions, white onions kind of don't change much. But when they're raw, red onions are some of the most pungent. And I kind of like that kick and that bite. So, red onions are really high in vitamin C and vitamin B6, which help again with serotonin and dopamine. Another thing I love, blueberries, fresh blueberries. We were talking about fiber, foods that are high in fiber. This is one of them. Vitamin C, vitamin K. They trigger responses in your brain that can help with your mood and your cognition. Oatmeal and oats are also great. I love cinnamon. I recommend this Vietnamese cinnamon. It's just a stronger taste. And again, it's also from Whole Foods. So if you like cinnamon, get the Vietnamese flavored one because it's just a more earthy and strong taste. It helps with your brain function. Avocado also helps. I always have a can of black beans in the house. Good source of fiber, good thing to throw in a salad to eat on the side with like fish or something. So it's really, really powerful in terms of just fiber, feeling full, and getting those omega-3 fatty acids that help with your stress hormones and they fight depression. Now, I want to introduce y'all to something that may be a little more foreign. This is called puna yam. In America, and especially in Black American culture, we have yams, and there are so many variations. But the yams that we eat, like kind of like the yams for Thanksgiving, are sweeter or like yellow. This is just a different variation. It's predominantly found and eaten in West Africa, and it's called puna yam. It's starchy, it's hearty, and it's high in fiber, which is important, and antioxidants, among other things. And they're linked to like boosting your brain health, reducing inflammation, which we talked about, and improving your blood sugar control. Another thing I want to talk about are Scotch bonnet peppers. You can also get habanero peppers, which have very similar benefits as Scotch bonnet. This is really popular in Nigerian cuisine. And there are so many recipes that I use this in, and I grind it up, put it in stews and things, even put it in eggs. And those are just a few of the items that I wanted to walk through to show you that this is something that we can live, and it's something that is accessible and possible. You don't have to go to Whole Foods. Go to your local grocer, get some of these ingredients, try them out. And I want to quickly talk about some easy things you can make. So I was talking about tomatoes, and when they're cooked, it releases some of the antioxidants that we need. Yes, Scotch bonnet peppers are popular in island cuisine. The reason this is so important, when I was looking at Black American Southern cuisines, did you know that a lot of them have their roots in West Africa? That is not to take away at all from Black American culture because it is unique, it is ours, it is specific. But because of the West African slave trade, a lot of the slaves didn't have access to the things that they used to have back home. So they made do with what they have. In Nigeria, we cook with pumpkin leaves and things that you can't readily find here. All that to say is try some West African recipes as well. We do this thing called egg stew where we cook down tomatoes and we mix in eggs with that. We throw in the Scotch bonnet pepper that's finely chopped up and we eat that with yam. And you can eat that for breakfast. Simply cut up the yam, boil it, and eat it with egg stew. Or you can make a chicken stew by boiling down tomatoes, putting in Scotch bonnet peppers, red onions, garlic, curry, bay leaves. Cook that down for about 45 minutes to get it to reduce into this unctuous sauce and eat it with rice. Eat it with eggs. Boiled eggs, Jacqueline, exactly. You can eat the stew with that as well. These are just some ideas and some recipes that we can eat because there's also a theory of eating what our ancestors ate and seeing how that can best work for our bodies and how we were designed to do, and how we were designed to live and how we were designed to move. So if you do want recipes, I am happy to walk you through them. I have so many in my arsenal, from Southern recipes to Cajun Creole recipes to West African recipes. I love eating what my people ate. And I really do believe that we have so many health benefits in our cuisine that can help our minds and help our moods. So email me at comethrive247@gmail.com if you want recipes that I can email directly to you. And yes, eat the rainbow, because guess what? When your food looks like a rainbow, it's more than likely meaning that you are eating foods that are rich in a diversity of nutrients. So make sure that your food is diverse. Definitely email me for more recipes. And now I want to move into what is coming up next. Tune in Tuesday, May 23rd, which is in 2 weeks, same time, same place. You already know what it is. And we are going to continue to celebrate Mental Health Awareness Month by talking about, how do you find a therapist? Is it like dating? A little bit. Let's talk about my journey and how I was able to find a therapist when I most needed it, and one that represented me and my values. Tune in on May 23rd for our conversation about therapists. Thank you for those who have been chiming in. I'm reading all of your comments and I want to go into practical pushes. So here is our segue into my favorite part of the conversation. Stay tuned. Okay, friends, you know we can't leave you without a practical push on your journey to wellness. I want you to try something new. Go to the grocery store and buy something new from the category of whole foods, fiber, antioxidants that you might have not tried before. Maybe it's a puna yam. Maybe it's Scotch bonnet peppers. Maybe it's palm oil from West Africa, which also has its own benefits in moderation. But don't be afraid to buy something new and to try something new. I have recipes that can help guide you through. Remember that when your food kind of looks like a rainbow, it means that there's rich and dense nutrients. And when we're eating well, we're also thinking well. And our minds are related to the wellness of our gut. Buy new, try new, and let me know how it turns out for you. Thank you so much for joining the conversation. It's been so great to see you again, and I can't wait to see you on May 23rd. Go thrive. Bye, friends.